The meeting has been posted according to open laws. And to begin, we'll go ahead and do roll call. Councilman Busenbark. Here. Councilman White. Here. Councilman Baird. Here. And Councilman Allen. Here. And I don't know about Vince yet. He hasn't mentioned that he wouldn't be here, so hopefully he'll make it. We've asked Councilman Baird to give us an opening prayer. And then after the prayer, if you'll follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity that we have to meet as a council today, and we're grateful for the citizens' attendance. We are grateful for this wonderful city and for the good people who live here. We're grateful for our community and for the willingness of our community to serve and to look out for one another. We're grateful for this nation that we live in, and we're grateful for the leaders who lead this nation. We pray that thy blessings would be upon them to be able to make the decisions that are appropriate, especially during these challenging times. We pray for those who are in uniform, that they may feel thy love and the appreciation of those who live in our nation. And we pray tonight as we meet as a council that thy Spirit would attend us and that we'll make decisions appropriate for this city in harmony with the desires of our community. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll just make a brief comment. This meeting is being broadcast by Zoom as well, and we have given the opportunity for the public to attend electronically. We do have a comment period here after we approve the minutes, and so if anybody pops up, Matt, if you can let us know if anybody has a comment, and then we'll also take comments from those that are here. So looking at the minutes, are there any amendments or adjustments that need to be made to last meeting's minutes? Okay.
I move we approve the minutes.
I'll second it. Motion by Councilman Busenbark, second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. We do have our public comment period. If there are any of those in the audience, all five of you, that may want to take a minute to address the council, now would be the time. You have up to 3 minutes. And if you just stand at the podium and state your name if you want to take that opportunity. Seeing none, oh yes, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. My name is Tori Queen. I live in Roosevelt, and I would like to propose that Roosevelt City become a Second Amendment sanctuary city ordinance in the county. I printed off some of the articles and stuff as to why they did it. Initially, they did it to go along with Virginia just to show support because we never can tell what the future holds. And then, let's see. And I also printed out what they had made. They made it the Title IX Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare. It's an unlawful act. And I printed that out for you also. Basically, it's just stating that we won't impose any laws here that are unconstitutional, which I think is really good for the citizens as well as I think it's good for law enforcement because it doesn't put them in that situation to do something that they don't want to do. You know what I mean? So there's that. And the reason why I thought it was an issue is because there is a bill that was brought to the state floor by actually a Republican, Daniel Thatcher, and it is a red flag law. It's Senate Bill 0087. It's still sitting there, and it's basically an extension. If somebody feels like you're a threat inside your household, they can call and have your guns confiscated. And then it extends on to even people that like are related to somebody by blood that is in your household. So I mean, like, it's a serious possibility that can happen inside. Just maybe give us some consideration.
Okay, thank you for being here, first of all. I know it's scary to get up and.
Yeah.
We appreciate you being here, and we have noticed, I have noticed that Uinta County has done that. I know the commissioners over there very well. Maybe we'll communicate with them and see what process they took to have that happen. And we'll look into it.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Any others? Yes. We'll give you 3 minutes each.
Don't jump on that. So James Taylor with Utah State University, and with me is Bob Peterson and Dave Watt, the two associate directors. We just want to say thanks, and we actually brought some ice cream, Aggie ice cream. Now you smile. I stood up and you smile. Aggie ice cream, you smile. So Bob will have that out. A couple of things. We're really proud of the last 4 years in the basin. Our average 10-year graduation numbers are about 110. Last year we were at 127 graduates, which was a big increase. This year we're at 153 graduates. And there's some reasons why, but we're really proud of the increase in graduates. 33% increase from 4 years ago. And the other thing that we 4 years ago decided to do is shorten the time to graduation. At our statewide campuses like Green City, Tooele, Moab here, students are part-time, and some of you have been students with Utah State. But if it takes 5, 6, 7 years to get through, it's discouraging, it's financially difficult, hard on a family. We've gone from 7.2 years down to 5.1 to get people through degrees. And so we're really proud of the work being done. We have really great educators, Councilman Busenbarg is one of our faculty members, and a lot of people from Roosevelt are a big part of our student services team. So we just really appreciate the support. We started here in the basin, not in Vernal, not in Uinta County, then expanded over to Uinta County. Also, I just looked at enrollment numbers for summer. We're up 3%, and we're up 7% for fall. Some of that is not necessarily a gain for Utah State. It's actually Logan-based Utah State students planning on staying home, not with the uncertainty of fall. So we still think we're up, but we're just thrilled with the continued support. Many of you have seen the increased landscaping and the entrance to our campus off of Highway 40. We think that was a nice addition to Roosevelt City and Duchesne County. So thanks again for the support. Dave has a couple of things about degrees that he wants to bring up. We've expanded also a number of degrees in the basin since we've been here in the last 4 years. So Dave?
Well, thank you, and it's great to be with you this evening. In addition to Don being a faculty member, David is one of our graduates, and it wasn't too long ago that he was speaking at our commencement ceremony of really one of our noted student researchers, and received many awards and recognition for that. So over the past 4 or 5 years, we've actually been able to increase our bachelor and master degrees by about 33%. And we're really excited, and I just wanted to share with you, 3 or 4 of the ones that we really feel are having a big impact. One is our nursing program, and currently we have 27 students in that program. We have a wonderful partnership with UB Tech. They start off at USU taking 5 elective classes. They go over across the street to UB Tech and receive their LPN, and then come back for their last year here with us. And that's it's a great example of the support we have and how kind of this grow your own vision that is really important to our communities. All of our nursing students graduate. We have a 100% pass rate, and then they are employed by our 2 hospitals in Tri-County, as well as a few other businesses. We're just starting our.
You just mentioned the BSN too, the Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, which we just rolled out.
Yes, we just rolled out the Bachelor of Science in Nursing, and this is really as you look in the nursing field, this is the way the nation is going. And so Utah State has that program as well, and we're expecting that to be well received by the community as well. James, anything else you want to say about that? We another program I just want to bring to your attention. We have 5 years now. We've had a cohort of about 12 students that attend our Masters of Social Work program, and we just had 12 graduate. They go in and provide counseling in places like Northeast Counseling, private practices. Some work for religious organizations, but with this COVID-19, we've seen a lot of stress within individuals and families. Our own local therapist that we have at USU has just been swamped, and so we're really excited that this is another example of a program that meets a local need. Then everybody's interested in business. We actually, Cameron Kutch has been around. Many of you know Cameron. Has a long history in the oil field and was an executive in that field for several years. But he's come on as our newest faculty member in business. We're really excited for the energy he brings, the local values he brings, the perspective of how important energy is to us. And he's doing a lot already with companies. He's developing an entrepreneur center. There'll be house over in Vernal, and he's really engaging with the students. We really see that program as really one of our bread and butter programs. And I'm talking about metaphors. I had to make sure I said my bread and butter. I was like, we have a joke amongst us about sometimes we get our metaphors mixed up, but I think I said that correctly. And then we're also, even those programs hit just a few selective students, we're very committed to our concurrent enrollment program, and that really influences a lot of people in the Uinta Basin. We have wonderful relationships with both Uinta High School, Duchesne High School, and also Altamont, Tabby, and yeah. But that program is very vibrant. It's students can, if they're properly planned and properly advised, they can really get a great head start on the college education and receive a lot of really cost-effective education right at the beginning. So that's it. Thank you for this opportunity to present to you and be with you this evening.
I would add, Dave, that I know in the nursing program in the past, we have better pass rates than we do up in Logan for the nursing program, which I think is incredible. The nurses that come through our program in the Uinta Basin do better than they do up in Logan. So that says a lot about the program and the people we have. And I've also, I've only been with USU a little over 2 years, but I've been longer as an adjunct. And they also have a lot of scholarships in the area that some go unused because we just don't have so many students want to leave, and there's so many opportunities for degrees and programs, and there's so many scholarships and money, and there's a lot of support from the community, businesses and others that help support those scholarships. So, I think they've got a lot of great things going on.
Well, we appreciate you being here, and I know on our behalf, we appreciate Cameron coming to our meetings, our economic development meetings. Those aren't the funnest, and it's not like the Arts, Parks, and Rec Committee where there's several things to do all the time, but he's been really instrumental in bringing information from USU. We have the hospital there, we have Department of Workforce Services, we have oil field companies, all communicating and hopefully, adding to and building upon what you've already done as far as education and those types of things, and knowing where our needs are in the community. But you guys, we really appreciate all that you do.
I did want to say, and this slipped my mind, we just received funding for information technology, and through the state, but with the COVID-19, they're relooking at the budgets, but that's actually a program that we're partnering with the UB Tech. They already have it going on, but we're hoping then they can come to us and get a bachelor's degree in that. Bob's been working very closely with Strata on that as well to make sure it fits their needs. But if that gets off the ground, we really see that really benefiting rural Utah, particularly the Union Basin.
Excellent. Well, that's exciting and really good information, especially in a not so exciting time right now. So that's really good information. We appreciate you coming and sharing that with us.
Well, I personally want to thank each and every one of you who served here. As I walked through the hall and I looked through all the mayors, and I go all the way back to Ralph Shields, and I'm a native of Roosevelt, and you guys do a lot of good. Thank you for what you do. I live in Vernal. When Union comes to play UNA, I always sit with Union, and I get rubbed a lot doing that. All my kids are UNA youths, but all of them are Cougars. So, proud to be a Roosevelt native.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks again. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks. There's a change. And so, sign that. Change, and then change. There's a change. All right. Let's go ahead and get to our first, I guess I'll do that. It's minor subdivision for Roosevelt City lot split for the library. I guess I'll be like everybody else. Anyway, so Dustin and Dave, you are here when this decision was first made, and then I think all of us were here when it was finalized as far as the completion of the sale to the Duchesne County Library. This is a plat that was done by All Reds, and this is part A would be the piece that we would sell to Duchesne County School District, and this needs to be done before we could have a formal REPC with them. And so this went to planning and zoning. You'll see there is an easement in there that's for storm drain, groundwater basically that collects and goes to Lagoon Street. Yes.
This is for the library, right?
Correct.
For the school district.
Oh, yeah. Did I say school district? Yeah. Duchesne County, pick one, library. But yeah, thanks, Dustin. Basically, this is where those two fields are at on the west side of Central Park. So, do you have any questions on that?
We've already done the transaction.
No, we have to do this before we can actually do the official.
We approved this, and this is just the actual lot
Correct.
split.
We've agreed on a price. We've agreed on the basic size of the lot. Now this is the official final survey piece. So, seeing no questions, would entertain a motion.
I'll motion that we approve the lot split.
Okay, second. I guess I didn't need to come down here. I did that for planning and zoning. So,
You have to, it's like your buddy.
all right, so we have a motion by Councilman Barrett, and who seconded it? Second by Councilman Allen, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We'll go ahead and we'll get this signed and then give it to the title company. We'll get the purchase contract in place and make it final. So. Carolyn, I'm looking, I don't see the planning and zoning that they've signed it yet.
No, they will.
Okay.
Okay, Julie.
Okay, our second item is lot line adjustment. Kirby, he came to the planning and zoning and presented to them. There was a little discussion, few corrections. You want to go ahead and take from there, Kirby?
Yeah, there's a few corrections that she would like to see, so there was a little adjustment on it, so we had to have it re-signed and stamped, and everything is finished, and they're happy with everything at this point, so it was completed what they did.
Was Lynn aware as well?
Yes, yes, she'd have had Lynn come over to.
I figured she would, I just wanted to
Yeah.
verify that.
No problem.
He was, where, being at the last meeting,
Yes.
he was
Yes,
a little concerned, so.
that's what this is.
And just so you know, the planning and zoning approval was contingent on those adjustments being made.
Yes.
Yes.
Dean has taken a look at those.
Mhm.
Sounds like the parties involved have been agreed, and so.
Was there like miscommunication or misunderstanding with the surveyor?
Yeah, there's a little miscommunication with the surveyor. They wanted it in one place and he put it in another, but he had his reasons, so that he adjusted it to what they wanted and they were happy with it. That's what it was.
Any other questions?
Was it not originally surveyed that way or platted?
No,
When they did the
yeah, I was just trying to realign it a little bit. It was not platted properly, so we
It's
just,
just moving from the dotted line
Yes.
to the solid line?
it's a sliver basically. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
I move we approve that if it's all, sounds like it's all been taken care of. I was the planning zone, so I move to approve.
Second?
Okay, motion by Councilman Rosenberg, second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thanks for taking care of that. You know,
Yeah, you're welcome.
I still have my hand in.
A little more difficult than I think meant. needed to be.
Me too, yeah.
But I'm glad that's straightened out, yeah. I do appreciate you taking care of that.
Are we gonna have to go like Sheila Lewis and Bush it now or anything?
No, no, you're not. I would come.
All right, next item is, so when Dave and I got elected, Dave noticed, he was the first one to notice that we didn't have the treasurer, the finance director, and a few of those things were not quite the way they should be. And so we looked into it, and there's quite a few adjustments that were made. In just separating those duties out, making sure things were done, people were appointed the way they should be. We got the finance director, recorder position straightened out according to state law, and all the responsibilities delegated to that individual. And everything that needed to be corrected basically within the administration and those whom we appoint and their responsibilities and everything else has been straightened out except the treasurer. And so, because Randy Robb has basically been doing that for the last, how many years, Randy?
2.5.
2.5 years. And he's been doing such a good job. We decided that we would forego any formal search or job posting or anything else and just go ahead and I would submit to appoint him as our treasurer tonight. And so that's what we're here to do. So,
Sorry, just the question is that, are we okay to do that without opening, I mean, I don't know, I'm just asking the question. I'm nothing against Randy, I just wonder if that's the proper.
where's our legal counsel?
Legal counsel.
There's not a requirement.
Because some positions don't have to post and et cetera.
Under certain circumstances, there are, but for an internal hire like this, and where the appointment, we're not actually advertising for a commission or a position. It's an appointment by the mayor with the advice and consent of council.
Okay.
So that's the process we have to go through, is that we need to make sure that we have the consent of council, and then the mayor can make the appointment.
Thank you for clarifying that, I appreciate it.
I talked about it with Grant, with Melissa, with our acting city manager, and we discussed that whether or not to open the position. We all felt strongly, I felt strongly that Randy's been doing that job. Really, at this point, it makes it official just to make what he's doing match what state code says we should be doing. So I didn't see, none of us saw that really important to try to advertise the position when we have somebody that's doing so well. And he's really the treasurer anyway, we just need to make it official more or less.
So there's not gonna be any new duties or anything, responsibility?
No, and that's another reason we didn't open it. It's not a new job, it's not a position, it's just the appointment of the title treasurer, right? So there would be no position to advertise because it's his job.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that like a little bit easier to understand? So we basically just took his job description and made sure it was compliant with code for what the city treasurer should be doing, and kind of just did the revision there.
so you just need the motion?
So, yeah, I submit him as being appointed, and then you just entertain a motion to approve or not approve. That motion will be. Treasurer. Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Baird and a second by Councilman Riley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Randy, you're now officially our treasurer, and you were before unofficially our treasurer. So
Glad to be here.
Yeah, treasurer, Rob.
I really have to say, and I'm not trying to, I don't know, but we have some of the best staff. Like, I'm very impressed with our staff and so grateful for them. I don't know, is it okay to say who else is coming or who else has been hired, or should we hold off on that? Is it official yet?
The offer letter has been signed.
So we do
yes,
that?
it's official, yeah.
So, go ahead, Ryan.
You want me? It's so intense, I can't believe it. So we opened up for a deputy recorder and we hired Lee Nicole back with us. So we're excited. Hopefully she'll hit the ground running, which we know she will. And so she's back on our team, and
That's awesome.
we all work well with her, and she's excited to be here, and I think it'll be great.
Super excited for the direction we're going. It's awesome to see. So, thank you. Okay, next, budget discussion, my favorite topic.
Mine too.
Okay, Kurt.
Thank you. Couple of things to begin with. Typically, these discussions start with internal staff in February, early March. And so, from my perspective, I'm way behind the ball. And that doesn't include the COVID-19 situation too. And that provides so little direction, and there's so much uncertainty at this point. And with the League of Cities and Towns, they had an economist from EconoWest, Doug McDonald, conduct some data research in regards to sales tax, potential sales tax effects. This is like putting lipstick on a pig, but Roosevelt is not anticipated to have near the impact that a lot of other municipalities are. Some of the municipalities along the Wasatch Front that have upscale retail, so for example, Nordstrom, those types of things, their sales tax is anticipated to, in the most pessimistic view, be down 50, 60, in some cases 70%. Pessimistic view for Roosevelt is about down almost 20%. The median, a weighted moderate average, is going to be down, according to Mr. McDonald, about 7.25%. That's just due to COVID. And then additionally here we have the aspect of the energy industry, just literally the bottom falling out. So to try to anticipate and forecast sales tax revenue, at this point, I feel comfortable saying a reduction of 10% for the next year. Beyond that, that's a good question. It depends on how quickly things can recover. Mr. McDonald also in his analysis said that the first 9 months of 2020 fiscal year will help to soften the blow for 2021. But if this extends much beyond November, December, January, it could be much, much worse. So we had a department head meeting this morning, and we talked about, we're anticipate matching expenses to a revenue reduction of approximately 10%. Talked a lot about next year, what do you need, not what you want. And so the next week and a half, we'll be sitting down with department heads to make some tough decisions. And our ultimate priority is to maintain the existing services, maintain maintenance, streets, the capital projects. Those things are just going to have to be planned to be delayed, and just do everything like we can to get by. And we also don't, as you said, Mayor, we have a great staff here at Roosevelt City, so that's another high priority. We don't want to have to get to that point. I know I spoke with another city manager of another municipality, and they're having to cut 8 to 10 full-time positions. We don't want to do that. Some of those are going to be just through attrition, retirement incentives, those types of things, but we're going to work through it.
Well, Kurt, we appreciate you being here, first of all.
Yes.
Is this your first or second council? This is a
Second council, yes.
And I know you haven't been given much time to get up to speed on all of this, and we appreciate your hard work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I agree with you. One thing that I do know, just working more closely with the staff, is that we run pretty lean and mean as it is.
And that's what so many have said. It's like, well, we're running lean and mean, so I guess we have to get meaner and leaner. So, I don't know which one. I don't know if the council wants to be the meaner portion.
Let's get leaner first, and hopefully we don't get meaner.
Well, and the nice thing about it is everybody understands. It's not. We're all in the same boat, whether it was the people from Utah State or the county, state. We're all in the same boat. So.
Right. How are we looking as far as the? So when will we have? June. We should have a new. Will that be the proposed budget in June?
Yes, yeah, the proposed budget, and we're going to look back at the 2020 budget and maybe make some adjustments. Some money that was budgeted that wasn't expended that we'll just need to account for and take care of in the budget.
Okay. Don, did you have?
I just was gonna say, I appreciate you're gonna do what you can to keep people. I agree, we have great staff, and I know it's difficult, and hopefully either attrition or reducing capital projects, keep people. I'm all for keeping people as best we can. And so, I appreciate the staff we have and admire the work they're doing as I'm learning more. And I just, I hate to see anyone go. I know sometimes things happen and, you have to do what you have to do. So I appreciate your comment.
And I just want to say this, I really appreciate, I don't know all the staff. I worked closely with Randy and with Ryan and Carolyn and the administrative staff here. I'm grateful that I couldn't imagine stepping into a situation where we didn't have the staff we do. And I also want to thank Melissa for her help too through the process.
We were just talking today, Melissa, just in our weekly meeting, and we don't see you going anywhere anytime soon, so just get comfortable. And just so you know, and for the public, Melissa's contract, so it's not like she's full-time, but she's been a good asset to our staff and helping out that way. We appreciate that.
And if it helps, I know where you get more eggy ice cream.
Any questions for Kurt?
Yeah, so looking back at the 2008 financial crisis, have we looked at what percentage the revenue was down for that period of time?
I didn't look back that far, but I spoke with John Zillis on Friday. I can't remember, it was just over the phone and I can't remember the exact year. It was just after he started. He said they saw a 30% reduction in sales tax revenue.
That was in 2015.
Yeah, and so he said we weathered the storm through that. So it's just a matter of weathering the storm. We have property tax assessments, those types of things, which will remain somewhat consistent, which will help. But we rely on property tax probably a little bit more than other municipalities as a whole, which can help to lessen the blow.
So seeing 2015 was 30%, why the decision for 10%?
So much uncertainty. That's the biggest thing.
Well, and
unforeseen. Go ahead, Mayor, sorry.
if I can answer that, because I am involved with the oil and gas industry. So in 2015, if you can imagine, oil went from $120 a barrel to $30 a barrel overnight. My business, for example, we lost 75% of our revenue overnight, 75% at least. That's a lot. So this, where we're at right now, we haven't recovered much from that. So there's not much more that can be done to the oil and gas industry to make it that much worse. Does that make sense? We're already at rock bottom, so it does make sense to me that we'd only see a 10% decrease just because we don't have much more. We're already down. My increase from 2015 has only increased by about 30%, 20% maybe. And so there's just not a lot to lose, a lot more to lose, I guess. So it is affecting us, but it's not like the big.
It's a crash, but no, we haven't had that, don't have this far to fall.
Exactly. Exactly.
Once again, you put lipstick on the pig.
Yeah, that's terrible, but it's like being kicked when you're down. So any other questions for Kurt?
Mayor, can I ask, do we want a work meeting, a budget work meeting before that council meeting? Or are you guys comfortable with us?
When is our, we were gonna have the budget meeting? Well, that's up to you guys. Would you like a work meeting? Dave and I would like, where we're assigned to finance, I'd like to have that meeting. But we could have a work meeting as well. It's up to you guys. We could do a meeting in the beginning of
I'd
June.
like to come personally. My schedule's pretty good. I could come at any time, so.
So it'd be the first Tuesday in June, same time.
So would you want to hold a full council meeting, or do you just want a couple of us, you and Dave and I, and anybody else interested in that?
I'd be interested. I think budget's a thing that the people who put us in our position are pretty sensitive about. So
I would agree. Then let's go ahead and just make it that first Tuesday in June. Let's go ahead and just have a council meeting, and we'll have a work meeting.
Yeah, and I'll provide I'll provide detail to the council and make it available via the.
Does that give you enough time?
I believe so, yes, yes. The first month or so, I was trying to get my feet underneath me. Now I feel like my feet are underneath me.
And that will give you time to get finished up what you're doing with the department heads, get all of their needs together, and then have something to
Yes,
present.
yes.
Okay. So let's plan on. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, you just have to have it adopted before the end of June. Regular council's the 16th, right? Yeah, so we have to have the budget numbers available to the public for review for at least 7 days prior to.
So let's go ahead and have our first meeting in June, and then we can put the numbers out once we go through the work meeting, and then we'll finalize it and do the official budget on the 16th.
Do we want a finance meeting in there somewhere too, or is that?
When have we usually been holding those? The first Monday, right? The Mondays are terrible. Wasn't it the first Tuesday we decided of the month? So maybe a couple of us could come that morning. I'll be here anyway. And I think we decided to go like 10:30 because we're here with the city attorney and city manager at 11. So maybe could we do a 10:30 meeting and just kind of hit that real quick? You think that gives us enough time?
They tend to go.
You can bump it over to 10 if you want.
Should we do 10?
Yeah.
Because you have a meeting at 9, Mayor, and then 10.
Okay.
And then 11, so.
Okay. I'm meeting down, so let's do that. Let's just meet all day.
Can you just make sure we're aware of it, so if we can come?
Yeah, we just need to make sure that we don't have more than 2 councilmen
Okay.
to those meetings. That's why we have assignments, yeah. And so, if you are coming, let me know so we can make sure we don't have more.
Well, come,
You can, no, it's just, we don't want to get in trouble with Oldham, but if you're coming, I can put you down, because.
like I said, my schedule's pretty free during the day. I don't have any action on, so I can come, but I don't want to, someone else wants to be here.
Okay, so let's just plan on you being there. I don't see anybody else jumping at the.
Chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
I just like knowing as much as I can. I keep asking questions all the time, trying to figure it all out.
So 10 o'clock Tuesday morning. Okay. Just plan on that and we'll,
Same day, right, the second?
anything else? Okay, thanks, Kurt. I sure appreciate you. All right, we have Mr. Olson with us tonight. And there's been a long ongoing discussion, right, Bryce, on this Durgan property. And so we've been trying to do, work something out. I'll let our city manager and Grant kind of take over and just explain what the situation is that we're in, why Bryce is here, and yeah, if you can go ahead.
Okay. You can stay up here too, Bryce.
Well,
Feel free to chime in
I
anytime.
didn't know that I was going to be here this evening. I was invited, so this was kind of news to me, but probably all good.
Hopefully.
Well, what do you mean by that?
I first wanted to give the council some background information on the property to know how we got to the point that we're needing to come to you for some clarification tonight. In early 2017, Mr. Olson entered into a lease agreement with a purchase option with the city for the Durgan Springs property. That's the 160 acres that you can see outlined in green there. The city has wells on the property that's outlined in blue. I was involved in the original negotiation of the lease back in early 2017, but then the next time that I was asked to take a look at it was roughly December of 2019, I think, when Mr. Olson was wanting to exercise the purchase option. And one of the details that needed to be worked out was regarding some irrigation water. It's farmland for him, so the water was important. When I started looking closely at the lease, we realized that the window of opportunity for the purchase option that's in the written lease had been between April 1st of 2017 and February 28th of 2019. So the window for the purchase option had passed, but just because that's a written term in the lease doesn't mean that the council can't extend that. And so the first thing that I'm needing for you guys to make a decision on is whether you still want to sell the property or not. And then if you do, we would proceed with negotiating on the water issues, which is where we left off in December. We've taken a look at that as well, and it's complicated. This property had been involved in some litigation back in, I think it was 2007, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Ryan, and so pinning down exactly what the city's water right there is important. We've hired a water law firm to do some research on that. We don't have a report back from them yet, but either way, that's something that the city needs, so that's in progress. If the council's not inclined to do a sale, Mr. Olson is still farming the property currently, correct? And has invested money anticipating that he would have that for the near future at least. And so if the sale doesn't go forward, I would be recommending that we do some type of a lease if Mr. Olson is wanting to enter into that kind of secures his interest in the property and to make sure that he gets the benefit of the investment that he's made there for farmland. In case you guys don't already know, there is a constitutional provision in Utah that prevents the sale of water, which is why we were looking at other options in December, where we could make some kind of assurance to Mr. Olson that he would have some water available. That's why we couldn't just include it in the sale, as we're not allowed by the state constitution to sell water. Okay, so unless there's any other questions, that kind of gives the background. Is there anything you want to add?
Well,
Right.
you know, what you brought up about the date, the window of opportunity, Ryan Snow and I went through this ourselves, and when I come in and make a $20,000 payment before the 1st of April, I notified him then that we were proceeding with purchase. And when he got looking, he says, no, it says December the 31st. In other words, it didn't go clear till April of this year on the lease. It ended December 31st, but I had to have it finalized and I had to have it closed out by December 31st.
That's not quite right. The purchase option had to be exercised by payment in full on February 28th of 2019. That's what the lease says, but that doesn't mean that the council doesn't have the ability to do something different that's in the lease or to not enforce that particular provision.
So, hang on just a second. Ryan, do you have anything to add to that?
To the window, is that what?
No, just
We
told in general?
Yeah, it's just no one's got to be that way.
The only thing I want to add is, before we make a real huge decision, we need to understand the water rights there, what we can do with the water rights. And it's currently being worked on by, as Grant said, some Craig Smith by the name. And so until we get those facts in and know what we have, I don't feel comfortable making long-term decisions until we know.
Vince, you had a question?
So we purchased the whole area, including the blue and the green, that's owned by the city?
That is currently owned by the city.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the blue is just to mark where the wells are.
and the blue was never part of the lease with the purchase option, other than there are provisions in there where there's some corrals they're just right there above, right there. The only thing from that property that was part of the lease is that Mr. Olson was allowed to utilize those corrals, but they were never part of the purchase.
And so the green would be the purchase and the blue is what Roosevelt City would keep, and that's where we have well there.
Is that the old highway that
That is
White House Highway to.
Yeah, like Ox, but that's the old highway there. So, right, I know that's us.
So I have a question for you, Bryce.
Go ahead.
Until we get the water situation figured out, will you be able to get lending on that piece, or is it still are you still interested in buying it if the water's a question, or?
Until I get some of the details, which we started to work on, as I say, when I come in and make my payment a year ago, the last of February, March, for April payment, which that's when the deal, it didn't start, it started in December, but the payment came due in April the 1st. I can't get them to, I sold my permit anticipating buying this. And what happens here is I didn't want to spend all that money, I wanted to finance part of it, and I can't get anybody to budge as far as financing it. They say it's worth anywhere from $500 an acre to $5,000, but without the water, it's worth nothing, which we all know that.
Yeah.
Without, I was always kind of included in our conversation with Ryan Snow that there would be water available, whether we leased it, whether it was a perpetual hookup, or whether it was water that was put there. You couldn't buy it, but we would have water made available for that property. That was always in the conversations. So
It's obvious, probably goes without saying, it's hard for us to do anything with that until we're certain what our water right is there, which is why we needed this research done by Craig Smith.
I guess the question I'd have is, we can only sell it, one, if we have a buyer that'll buy it, and we don't even know if you're totally interested until we get the water figured out. Is that
so I can get financing for it. That's been not having those questions answered. And I went over and talked to Andrew in Water Rights, and he couldn't give me a direct answer either. I run around quite a little bit there trying to figure out what and how, and just how to get this resolved a little bit. So I was just kind of left up in the air, but there you are, that's what it is. And I thought,
When was the lease term, how long did the lease term go?
It went through December of 2019.
So what is it currently? Is there not?
There's not a lease in place, which is why I was asking for it to come back in front of you guys, is we're not in a good position, either the Olsons or the city right now, where the agreement is expired. He's still investing time, effort, and money into the property, not knowing what the city wants to do going forward. And right now, we're in a position where we don't necessarily know what he wants to do going forward either.
What I've done, just to bring you up to date a little bit, trying to bring the property, and there was the word integrity used all along. Without water, how do you keep the integrity of the property? If you know what I'm saying, even whether I'm leasing or otherwise, it's pretty hard to do if you don't have something there to ride on it. And it's had them 119 shares of, now I guess they can't be called shares, but that 119 shares has been being paid to Associated Waters through Dry Gulch handling that. That's where that came from, and that's what's been being issued to me through the commissioner, water commissioner, Shane Hamlin, or maybe I don't need to give names, but through the water commissioner, through the tribe, that's been coming on that property when it is there, which it is there right now. Now, I don't know how good it's gonna be. I've had one good year out of 3 so far, and this one I thought was gonna be pretty good, and it's not looking so hot right now. But I put $5,700 worth of stabilizer, sulfur on that last December to stabilize the salt and that in the ground so that we could try to get something to grow. And then I put another little over $4,000 in just actually fertilizer on it here just a month and a half ago, you know, trying to get things to go, trying to get it early, trying to catch the high water and a few things like that. So that's what we've done at this point in time, other than the fact that there's been Roosevelt City still has the $30,000 over and above the lease payment.
Now, that was the next question. So I have 3 questions. Well, 2, and then one to the council. But what is the normal lease payment? What was the normal lease
It's been
payment?
$10,000, which is more than what it has been. That's neither here nor there, but it's
So
$10,000.
$10,000 a year.
And that was part of the deal, that I would pay that over and above, showing that I was serious about wanting to buy the property, not just,
So it went from 10,000 to, what were you paying?
no, 20,000 a year.
20,000 a year.
And 10 of it was for the lease, and the
For a
rest,
3-year period,
Roosevelt
right?
City held the rest. And so there's $30,000 over and above what's been for the lease.
That was supposed to go to the purchase.
Right.
Correct. So there's that question. And then the other question I had for you, Bryce, is I know one of the things that we talked about is like doing a 10-year lease on the property. So it's a longer term lease. Then that water issues would kind of go away at that point. We wouldn't have to worry about that. You'd have what you thought you had. You wouldn't have to purchase the property, but you'd have a 10-year lease. Is that
Okay.
something that you would want to
Where we at?
consider?
Okay, that was what we kind of decided with it. She and I talked about it, and I talked to Ron about it a little bit, for whatever that's worth. You know, he's been real good to work with, and Roosevelt City's been real good to work with. I don't have any complaints. I mean, it's a dry year. Guess what? That's the way it is. I'm not gonna get what I would, what I'd like to, but it's not $9,000 an acre property either.
Yeah.
So, but maybe I could propose this if the council would go for it at this point in time, looking at, I hate to say this, my age and different things. Maybe in another 10, maybe I won't want to be doing this. I don't know. What I propose, and I kind of mentioned to Ryan, is a long-term lease, which, you think 10 years long-term, but on these leases, 10 years goes by in a hurry. I'm not kidding you. A 5-year lease with these tribal ones, it's just like you just get it going. Most of you probably know that. Just get it going. It's time to release again. So I would propose at least a 10-year lease with the option of having the ability to first release again, if I so choose to.
Okay.
Just put in that I could have first option out of it after 10 years, depending on where I'm at. My intent was to move where I'm at, and that's where I was going to finally settle out and be done. I mean, that's where I was going to move the whole operation, forget the other 2,200 acres that I've got. So that's what I was wanting to do, was move over there, and then just finish up. But if we work something out so I don't lose the $30,000, if it could be worked in somehow, that's quite a shot in the arm to me, you know what I'm saying, as far as that is concerned. And, I don't know, I'll work with Roosevelt City on what water we do have and what water we do get.
Okay.
I mean, if I can, it was proposed once upon a time that, if I pay the demurrage or whatever, the power bill on the pump, that we could pump it more, or however we could work something like that out, what we can pump, there's 1.9 acre feet that can be pumped there.
And I think that's still something that we can work on and try to accommodate.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if we can do something like that, so I'm not, you know, I accept the fact that you're gonna have bad years and it's high water right. You know, I've already accepted that. That isn't anything I didn't know going forward.
Right.
And you just took the chance. Like I said, I had 1 out of 3 so far that's been pretty good. The rest of them, you know, we got by, you know, what I got underground and things like that. We make it work, and I'm trying to keep it there.
So if we could get at least a 10-year lease, you'd feel comfortable with that, or you'd like to buy it outright. So we do have some options. I just wanted to
Sure.
get all the options out of the table.
We talked about it. My wife and I, yeah, that's what we're, with the confusion and one thing and another, maybe go that route with an option. At least it might be reappraised or something like
Whether we could do
that.
an option to buy it for 10 years or release.
Yeah, could even do that if we get it straightened out, but I can't get anybody to talk finance. What I'm saying, I didn't want to spend all my money just on that.
Or maybe we just keep
Till I had water and I can't.
Maybe we wouldn't do an option grant to buy it, but it could be up for consideration. Does that make sense? So it's not a guaranteed option to buy, but we can look at it in 10 years and then see if it's something, or if the council feels like we want to get rid of the property, there is some work that we'll have to do to try to figure out the water rights. And we're already kind of working on that. But to me, there's a couple options. So I don't know, does the council have any other questions? Does everyone understand more or less the situation?
I have some more questions. So let me make sure I understand this right. So to demonstrate your interest in future purchase, you were paying $10,000 above the lease price, and that money was being held by the city.
Yes.
And technically, the city has $30,000.
Yes.
Well, the lease.
Not exactly. That is a way that you can apply it, and I think that it's probably the most equitable way to look at it. But the way that the agreement was written is that there was $20,000 a year being paid. And then in a separate clause, it says that half of the lease payments could be applied towards the purchase. But there's nothing in there saying that it's $10,000 for a lease and then $10,000 almost as earnest money or something for the sale. But both sides are acknowledging that $10,000 is kind of what was contemplated per year for the lease, and he was paying $20,000.
How long have you been leasing this piece of property?
I've had it for 3 years.
Okay, so that's what it started with. The anticipation was a year lease at 10,000, but because the option to buy the extra 10,000 would be applied to the purchase price. There was no other prior 10,000 a year, like precedence, I guess is what I'm saying as far as what the lease.
It was leased to a different rancher before this, and I didn't go back and look at that lease. You guys don't remember what
The amount,
yeah.
it was lower. I don't know the exact amount, but it wasn't 10,000.
Mr. Olson's, I believe it was roughly half of what he was paying for just the lease, so 5,000 a year rather than 10. But there's no disputing that he paid substantially more than the prior lease, and that what was anticipated at the time is that he was likely to exercise the purchase option and was going to get a credit of half of his yearly payments that would be applied towards the purchase.
And the purchase option wasn't executed because there was a question about the water.
Well, that's what we've been kind of working on for quite some time. I mean, it's been ongoing. And the last meeting I was to, that was one of the things that was to be worked on, and even the prior city manager was, we're working on that, trying to get the water for it. So.
And I do want to, talk Goldson up a little bit as far as, because I've been there firsthand as far as watching that property for the last 15 years, and he's put time and effort. It's the first time he's seen fertilizer in 15 years. You know, so he is putting some money back into it and making it better than what it has been in the past, so. Definitely some effort that's gone in on Hudson Park.
So Grant, what would you recommend to make it equitable for him as we investigate the water thing? Can we do another 10-year contract? Or?
Yeah, we can, and we can put provisions in there saying that you don't really have to have it, but where we're talking about it, we can say that the lease can be terminated as long as both parties agree early, and we can enter into a different agreement. But I would like to not just have it hanging out there with no agreement in place. So my recommendation is that we do something similar to what Mr. Olson is proposing. Go ahead and enter into another 10-year lease. We can have options in there for renewal for a subsequent term or something like that, in case it does stay in place for the full term of the lease. And then once the research is done on the water right, if both sides are wanting to revisit the purchase option, they're free to negotiate that aside from the lease. And if they reach an agreement, then terminate the lease when the property sells. The main thing I want is just to tie up this loose end, because we've got a tenant on property, which is not a good situation for us to be in, and it's not a good situation for him to be in, where he's needing to invest money into the property in order for it to be economically feasible for him, but there's no agreement in place to secure his interest long-term, so he gets the full benefit of his investment.
What is it about the water rights that's in question? Because you have never had a water company tell you that you couldn't have the water unless it wasn't available,
No,
right?
and the high water, there's not a question on, but it fluctuates as he was
So
saying.
there may be some other, that's regular water, not just high water, right?
Well, we have a well there that is an irrigation well right now.
So
And
it's pumped water that we're questioning.
but because of that litigation back in 2007, it's very hard to tell exactly what our right is there.
If it's the high water right, or if it's coming out of the irrigation, or out of the well. That's the question.
Yeah,
So
and so much.
It may have been converted.
Go back out on the ground.
It may have been converted from the ditch to the well, and so we're trying to make sure that that's,
So do we have,
without saying too much.
do we have a legal requirement to list the property at the end of that contract, or was there an extension?
Well, and we don't have a legal requirement to list the property anyway. In fact, there's an exception in the open meeting laws for negotiation on sale of property. So somebody can approach the city, negotiate for a purchase and everything behind closed doors, and then nothing's announced until it's actually finalized. So we're not required to list it if we were going to sell it. If we're entering into a lease, we don't have any requirement to list it first either, or to open it up to everybody.
And to go back to your question real quick, Vince, about, what would Grant do? I think what part of your question was alluding to the 30,000, and knowing Grant well enough, I know Grant's not going to get involved with the budgetary numbers. He's going to stick with the legalities.
Yeah.
So whether or not we want to deal with the 30,000 and try to make that equitable with Bryce, that's something that we'll need to decide. I'm letting you off the hook a little bit, but because I know Grant's only concerned about legalities and those types of things. When it comes to some of those others, that's something that we'll have to.
And to make sure we're clear on that, my interpretation of the agreement is that the city's not bound to do anything with it. But I also, in fairness, Mr. Olson, wanted to make sure that you understood that when it was negotiated, it was anticipated that he would be getting half of that credit.
So at the beginning of the discussion, you made a recommendation. You said I wouldn't do what? Remind me.
Well, as far as commitment with the water situation.
Okay.
Like selling it with X amount of water, we can't do that until we know what X amount of water is.
But there was no reservation about lease.
they give you any kind of a timeline on when that's gonna be
Been
resolved?
pushing him. We're
Yeah, and
trying.
I think
tried
the
to
question
get to what I
tonight,
can for this meeting, but
And that is probably something else you guys need to know, is that we've talked about this irrigation well there, and it is turned on a couple times a year for maintenance and testing anyway. But that's not been the water that he's been relying on. It's been the water that's coming down the ditch, which he still has access to right now, but he said it's not a particularly good year so far.
yeah, it's just the high water.
if I could make a suggestion, and I've been in the discussions and everything else, if Mr. Olson's good with a 10-year lease, I would say that we move forward with a 10-year lease, unless the council feels strongly they want to sell that piece of property, and then we can try to negotiate that and go that way. But my suggestion would be a 10-year lease. As Grant said, we can still put some provisions in there if it comes available and we get this figured out in the future, then that can come before the council at a later date. But at least we can get at least a 10-year lease in place with Bryce knowing that his investment in that property is not going to be lost, and then he can recoup the money that he spent there and get use out of it, having it renewable at the end of the 10 years, and maybe knowing that you might not want to farm that, and then you didn't have to dump, all that money back in. And then I think the other thing on the table again is just whether or not we want to do anything with the, crediting back some of that money that was spent in anticipation of the purchase, or if we let it lie. I think those are the two biggest decisions: what to do with the money that's already been spent, if we're going to sell it, or just lease it at this time.
And Grant, your recommendation again with you would state that what option, you said there was a slight change you would make to the old if we did a 10-year lease.
Well,
Termination wise. There was a comment you made about early termination.
I think
Just
if
that
both parties
optional
agree, both
party
yeah, but if both parties agree, so if we're able to work out the water situation and both parties were still in favor of a sale, we would just have it specified in the lease that on mutual agreement, the lease would be terminated upon the purchase of the property by.
If I could make one more comment, maybe in my behalf, I think you got to understand that I got caught up in the deal last year with things changing, administration changing. I got caught up in the Culver deal this time, trying to get things. If you don't understand that here's the date you're supposed to do something, and then turn around and you can't get in until the 19th of next month, and you can't get on the agenda until the next month. It's been something definitely different trying to get on the agenda. I finally said, I think in talking with the mayor, he says, go put yourself on the deal. So I come up and put myself on the docket. I said, that's the only way I'm going to get this across. And I think what you got to remember, and I remember Dusty's comment real well, when he said at that meeting, no one knew about it.
Yeah.
So there I am.
And I told him that I didn't know about it, and he thought that I was crazy. How do you not know about it?
I said, I don't know about something like this. But it went unknown for 3 years.
So do we have a?
I'll move that we extend the 10-year contract offer.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll amend that. Yeah, I'll amend it that we include that 30,000 outstanding money towards your lease payments for the next.
Fine with me.
So you have someone else to add?
No, that's what I was gonna recommend is we count that into the lease.
You guys make this so hard for me.
We have a motion to enter into a lease, a 10-year lease. And then we have an amendment that, so Dave Baird made an amendment that'll be included with that 10-year lease. We credit back the additional 30,000 that he's paid in anticipation towards the purchase.
I think, Mayor, that we ought to add the language that our council said that anytime that there can be an agreement for a sale, that.
And to make that easy for you, Carolyn, subject to legal review.
Let me clean up. There's his intent was to buy out.
So subject to legal review.
The Olsons are asking for one other provision in there, And that would be a first right of refusal. So if the property was to be sold, which the city would not be bound to do in a first right of refusal like you are a purchase option, but they would like to be able to purchase it if somebody else came in and made an offer and the city decided they were going to sell it.
Do we have somebody that will amend their amended motion to include that?
There's nothing problem doing that.
And I would just
No, the
put
difference-
subject to fair market value or something like that in the language.
Which the city's required to do by law anyway. The difference between a purchase option and a first right of refusal is in a purchase option, the buyer gets to decide whether they're going to buy it. And in this case, as long as they had the money by the February 28th, 2019 date and paid in full, the city was bound to sell it under the purchase option. In a first right of refusal, they're just saying if the property is going to sell, but the city is not bound to sell it, then they get the first shot at it. And so if somebody comes in and makes an offer on the property, they would be able to match the offer and the property would sell to them instead of the other person.
It's a good practice.
I would have the amendment if we needed, that we amend it first, or give them first right of refusal.
Okay, so now that's Don's.
I got the third, I got the motion, the first amendment, and the second.
So we're gonna vote on
Now we need a second.
yeah, that's the max that we can have on the table.
So you have to second it, because we all.
So we have the amended motion by Don, which is to include everything that you have, right? Do you have any questions on the amendment of the motion? We have a second by Councilman Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. So that'll give you 10 years. You got your first right of refusal. You're good to go. And then if we end up selling it, then you're set. That make you feel better, Mayor?
It'll work.
That makes me feel better, yes.
Okay, so we can work out the water. now.
We'll, right.
It's a lot easier, just like where it wasn't to sell, we can work out some water and.
Yeah.
figure that out.
We have to adjust that.
No, I'm subject to legal counsel review. So
Yeah,
I think
that's what's part of it.
I have a question. The 30, so you guys made an amendment to include the 30,000. Is that towards the sale or towards the lease?
towards the.
Towards the lease.
So it'll be a 10-year lease, 10,000, 10,000 there, 100,000.
We would credit that, 30,000 towards that price.
Towards the purchase price or?
No, the lease, towards the lease.
So you're saying you can have 3 months free?
3 years.
3 years free?
Yes.
Do you already paid?
Prepaid.
Yeah, pay up front.
Very great.
So the 30,000 is gonna apply the first 3 years, not be spread out over the,
That's however we want to do that.
what, you have the preference?
I'm willing to work with you, whatever works with you guys.
I think that's a decision we could probably make with our finance group.
The problem is if we keep that paragraph about the additional applying.
Well, that'll go out because there's not a purchase option
Okay,
in the new one.
okay.
And so it'll just, the way that I would propose that I draft it is that we'll either say that they paid the first 3 years up front, so the first due date will be 3 years out, or we reduce the yearly amount by $2,000.
Spread it out over the starting date.
Yeah.
I mean, Roosevelt City's been good.
Is there a
I have no
preference
complaints.
financially?
There's really not.
Is there a preference for you?
Would you rather have that money applied the first 3 years and then start
I
again?
would rather, yes, because it's been paid in advance anyway, so whatever, if that's all right.
We'll just do it the first 3 years.
Yeah,
Yeah, if they're okay with that, I think that's great.
as long as our finance group is okay with that.
Okay, and then Mrs. Olson just brought up one other thing that she would like to ask you to include. And that's that if something were to happen to Mr. Olson, that she has an exit clause where she would be able to give notice and terminate the lease, because she won't be.
Just don't pull it, don't get a life insurance policy on it.
Guarantee those cows will go. Brian's gonna be the first call for selling the cows.
I think that's
And that's
the way you
No, because you put that in you put it as the legal review, right?
yeah.
Okay, the way that I would propose that I do it is that it can be hard to lease the property out if if something happens mid-year. And so I would want it to go like through the season. Okay, I'll add that in there.
Okay, I think that's pretty clear. And we appreciate you being here, Mrs. Olson, because you know how we work, we forget half the stuff that should have been in there, and you'd have to come back anyway.
You remind me.
So it's good to get it off, knocked out in once.
Okay, I think that's all that I needed. I'll get Lease drafted and send it to you guys for review.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor, I'll still get a report on the water situation, so we know.
It would be good just to follow through.
For future reference.
Yeah, plus we'll need to know if they wanna buy some down the road.
Yes.
Through a meter or whatever, we gotta know what we can pump out. So.
Yeah,
Definitely. Okay,
sounds good.
figure that out so I can.
Thanks, Bryce. Appreciate you being
Thanks.
here. This will be a time for quite a while, so.
It's been a while. No, that's right.
All right, let's move on to the next item. Resolution 2023-01, Utah Retirement System Public Safety Retirement Benefits. Ryan, are you gonna?
No, I need him for a minute.
Kurt's
getting.
I forgot, we have a finance guy.
Well, I also used to work at Utah Retirement System, so I'm pretty familiar with this. Little background. Prior to 2010, the Utah Retirement System's defined benefit or pension program, they only had one option. It was a tier 1 option. And there was due to the nature, for example, if we were to go through the current economic situation right now where values of investments have dropped significantly, the contribution rate that Utah Retirement Systems requires of employers from these pension plans could really fluctuate tremendously. Over the course of my 5 years at URS, I saw it go from about 12% up to 18.5%, which made it very difficult for employers to budget for that. So back in 2010, the Utah legislature put into place a tier 2 retirement system that allows for more consistent. Basically, what they did is, at that point in time, they capped the amount that any employer would have to pay towards the Utah retirement system. And any fluctuation that was built in. So for example, if things went really well and their contribution rate to the employer for the pension itself dropped, the difference between the floor and what it was at would be put into a 401k for all of those tier 2 employees. With public safety, well, prior to that, with the tier 1 programs, for every year of service that public safety firefighters put into the system, they received a multiplier of 2.5%. So for every year work, they got 2.5% of their highest 3 years of salary. That changed with the tier 2. It went from 2.5 to 1.5. And there are just some other things, length of time they had to work before they got a full pension, those types of things. But since that time, 2011, there's been a lot of concerns expressed. Well, these public safety firefighter employees, physically demanding jobs, oftentimes 25-year retirement plus the 1.5% multiplier doesn't provide a lot of incentives. So went to the legislature, and legislature approved last year, is that right, Grant?
And to take effect July of this year. So the effective date was pushed out a little over a year.
To change that multiplier to 2% for any service going forward beginning July 1st of 2020. Because the multiplier increased by 25%, the cost of providing the pension also increased. And within that tier 2, there's a hybrid system where they have a pension and a small contribution into a 401k, or they just have the 401k. We have 5 officers on the Roosevelt City Police Force who are that tier 2 hybrid plan. And all that the legislature did is they increased that floor by 4.27%. For the one officer who has the 401k, what that gives him is 2% more into his 401k. For the other 5, it gives them, it's going to cost 4.27% 2% automatically can go to the city, and the legislation allowed the city to choose to pick up the additional 2.27% or pass it on to the employee and have the employee pay that. So that's really what we're here to discuss, is that the city would like to pick up the additional 2.27% or pass it on to the employee.
And if it's passed on to the employee, it's not an optional thing. There would be 2.27% deducted from their paychecks. It's not something that they can opt out of and keep their job. So if the city doesn't pick it up, it will result in that, not a pay cut because it's going towards their retirement, but what they see in their paycheck will be reduced.
Does anybody have any questions on how that works?
Can they change plans or?
No.
It's once they, with
Once
tier
they
two,
log in.
they've got their 1 year to make the decision and they can't opt out after that.
The problem with the city not picking it up is that these 5 are lesser paid officers because they're newer. Those of us that have been on the system are on the old system with 2.5% a year. So it's gonna hurt them more than it possibly would others.
On the old system, we're picking it up, right?
Same pace at all.
Yeah, and that's just the way this system was structured, the city. Well, the non-contributory system, that's the way it's structured,
Right.
as the employer pays all.
And this is not something that just Roosevelt City has had to deal with. It's been all agencies. Just to give you some insight on what's happening in other places, I know Duchesne County picked it up and has far more employees that fall into the tier 2 system. And not just greater in number, but I think a higher percentage of law enforcement falls into the tier 2 than Roosevelt City. And then had you looked at other municipalities?
I did.
You did?
Oh, I don't know if you did. Too.
Well, and there was a survey, and this was conducted a month and a half ago by Ogden City Human Resources. So I believe they got responses between 30 and 35 different public employers. And that was pretty early in the game, but even those that had, there were a lot of employers that responded uncertain because they hadn't had a chance to go before council. But 95% of those that had responded, they were going to pick up the additional 2.27%.
So me and our finance guy, recorder, finance guy, what's your suggestion? Scratch that, Melissa.
You absolutely need to pick it up. Every agency that I had any contact with, which is every county in the state of Utah, and most municipalities are picking it up. Additionally, with as hard as it is to recruit and retain law enforcement officers, especially here in rural Utah, we have to be competitive in any way that we can, and in making the employees do that on their own would not be good for the agency and the city as a whole, in my opinion. A lot of municipalities and counties that even at this point are doing more than what URS is requiring by statute to keep officers. And so I think it would be a very, very bad idea to not pick it up.
What are we talking about, 2.27%, what total?
Well, it's going to be built in 2% across the board for all the 6 that are the tier. It's going to be oh, that's a good question. I was trying to crunch the numbers.
Just a rough idea.
Is it 2.27% of their annual gross?
Yes.
So
2.2, well,
and
and with police officers, it's different.
$12 a piece, so you're probably looking at 8,000.
I would say 5 to 8. That's my guess. It was like 45,000 for Duchesne County, but we have close to 25 officers on that.
Right. I'm just doing, I've looked at all the officers.
I'm just curious, but that doesn't sound like an unreasonable thing at all. If it's,
well, and it's a huge benefit to the I'll put on my HR hat for a second. It's a huge benefit to the officers because they potentially, instead of having to work 25 years and get 37.5% of their highest salary, they can work 20 years and get 40%. So it's just an additional benefit, Public safety, they do a great job and they put their lives on the line. So that's my opinion.
I think the biggest thing is, to help prick out with, retaining employees and everything else. I think if all the other counties and municipalities are doing it and we're not doing it, we're at a disadvantage to keep and retain employees. So.
Do we need a motion then? Yep. I move we approve this
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Guzman, a second by Councilman Baird. All in favor? Any opposed?
Sorry, I didn't hear Don's.
I was just saying approve the two, that we would cover each couple in 2 seconds.
Okay, I had drafted a resolution to go either way, and so if we're just adopting the resolution to pick up the increased expense, then it should be here and ready for signature.
Okay, so we'll, the resolution.
So you would pass the resolution.
So we passed the resolution.
2023-01. Is that what everybody understood that voted?
Yes.
Yes. I did.
Don's the only one that understood all the math.
I got that, man.
Oh, Kurt knows about that.
So,
I'll do my.
did you have anything else on the Durgan stuff too? I know I kind of think we jumped over to the next.
No, I think I've got all the proposed terms that I needed. I'll get a draft to you guys, and then you can review it, tell me if you want anything changed.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Grant.
And we appreciate that. Any of these things that are like falling through the cracks, all the administration changes and the back door deals that were made probably need to be.
I think with the Durgan property, the big problem was he was ready to buy, but he didn't have guarantee on the water. And so he couldn't get financing to buy it. So, and then the changes happened. And so we're still in limbo.
So we've got a situation.
Just about both councils, and the other people got with it. And I said, it was like that.
So, hey, let's move on to the next one. Let's go ahead and talk about ordinance 2024-435, Title 2, Chapter 4. This one we already discussed at length at our last meeting. This is just presenting the changes that we had agreed to, but we tabled it until those changes were made so that when we approved it, we knew it was correct. We could read it before we approved it. Right. So this is, I don't think we need to have a lot of discussion on it, other than we just need to make sure that those changes are what we thought. So can you go and one of the changes, well, Grant, he left us already, didn't he? Term limits was the term big one we. So term limits, we talked about that. I think in talking with him and looking at it, I think.
I thought it looked good.
The other thing was just to give Brian, the city manager, the mayor, the opportunity to make an executive decision if in an emergency, and then that would be ratified or rolled back in the next council meeting, but that would give some flexibility there.
The other one was the role of the mayor. You moved one of the sentences farther down. So can you scroll that up a little bit? No, I'm sorry, down, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they had first thing was that they were the figurehead or whatever.
Yeah, just the
ceremonial, yeah. And I didn't like that because it just, that being the first thing didn't make sense to me because it made it sound like.
He wears a robe and he stands with.
Yeah, and he kisses babies, you know.
Well, and that's how it was intended, to be honest, when they modified this in 2017, I believe. Well, you can tell, 2017. But we rolled that back a little bit too. So, and it's worked great. Basically, this is just ratifying what we've been doing for the past, well, since Ryan Claiborne's been acting city manager, and that's the mayor and the city manager is working as a team.
Now, did we move to approve this with the changes?
Well, we said to table it until we saw the changes, so we do need a motion to approve if that's what you guys.
I have a quick question for Grant. Grant?
He's on the phone.
Oh, he's on the phone.
He's here. But we can wait.
Sorry to interrupt, I didn't know you're on the phone. So on this one, and the role of the mayor looks good, like you covered everything as far as emergencies go and everything.
Okay.
I think we had also talked about making sure that it was in there, the mayor shall retain all legislative and judicial powers vested by law. We're gonna add and executive powers. Did you get my email today by chance, or yesterday?
I did, and it sent one back saying that I felt like it was covered and was recommended that we not change the language from the way that it's in the statute.
It does say the mayor may delegate to the city manager any executive or administrative power held to the mayor pursuant to the.
Yeah, and I agree that that covers it, and I just wanted to, I know we had that discussion and recommended that change, so I just was wondering what happened.
When I went back and looked at the statute, I was trying to keep the language as close as we could, other than we changed the order after the comments that Councilman Busenbart made. But I felt like if we added it in that, what is it, the second sentence, the delegation part, then we're duplicating, but that doesn't mean we couldn't do it that way and take out the sentence that comes later on.
As long as it's all covered in there, I'm okay with it. If it's already pretty clear,
I
as
looked,
far as the legal perspective goes, I'm not even worried about
I
it.
looked close at what you sent over. The reason that I was recommending we leave it this way is this is closer to what state code says.
Okay.
And so anytime we can, I would rather pare back that language rather than deviate from that.
Okay.
But I think we accomplished the exact same thing in the end.
Good. Okay, that was all I had.
Yeah.
But I like the other changes. I think it looks good.
Great. Any other questions on that? I know we've hashed this one out pretty good. Seeing
Appreciate
none,
the changes, Grant, thank you.
No problem.
looks good. Would entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Councilman Riley and a second by Councilman Allen. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. I did see the purchase orders, go down.
I have a question about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
So again, this isn't against anybody. It's like, but I'm
Start off like that.
I know, it's like calling your baby ugly and saying I'm pretty dressed, but, so, just so you understand where I'm coming from, I'm a fiscally, like a hawk. So when I see $30,000 for painting for the fire department, I'm not saying it didn't need it. What I'm saying is if someone, a constituent says, why did they spend $30,000 to paint inside the fire department? Nobody sees that. Was it unhealthy or, you know what I'm saying? So what I would say is in the future, when big purchase orders like this come up, that somebody be invited to go look and say, this is why we need to do that, because we're the people that are sent here from the taxpayers to make sure that the money's spent properly. That's all I'm asking. And I don't not trust the city manager.
So it was part of the capital, it's a capital project, so it was approved earlier this year. And we probably should have worded that a little better too, because it isn't just painting, it's also redoing the whole floor, resurfacing the floors over there, and the painting, and the lights. So it was talked about earlier, but I don't know, I mean, I agree with you, you probably should see what condition it is now and what it should be doing to improve it.
And I agree, we're inheriting a lot of the things from last year before we were elected, but, like the property on Main Street and things that, to avoid those things in the future, I would recommend, and I'm just saying this, I'm approving it. You guys know what needs to be done, but when somebody asks that question, it'd be nice to go back and say, yeah, I looked at it, it was horrible. You guys should have seen why we bought the building on Main Street. You should have seen why, so that we can answer those questions.
No, very valid, and I appreciate that. In fact, it's actually something to look forward to when we're working on the budget now. I mean, these projects will be on that list, and that's when you really look at them. And
yeah, and an invitation, maybe.
I have a comment I can go along with that, Vince. I resent Carolyn and Brian and who else, Grant was included in that. The assignments that we have for councilmen to different areas of the city. And I think Vince and Dave Bear are assigned to safety, emergency preparedness, those types of things. So, if we could utilize that list as these projects come up, make sure the councilmen who are involved with those things or assigned to those things are invited to, I think that's a good point. I didn't think of that personally. could have done, yeah.
So,
And I didn't think about that either. I knew about this one as far as the fire department. I didn't know what the price would be, but I'd had discussions with our city manager. But that's a good point. Like, I didn't even think to say, hey, but that's good.
No, I wrote it down, I didn't know, so.
But I think we should make that common practice. Just
and it's not,
as we have projects come up, whoever's area that's in, we have a couple of the councilmen, take a peek, and then they can give their opinion as to, yeah, that's exactly what I think.
and it's not
That's
to question your expertise. When the chief says we gotta have new pieces of equipment, I trust that he knows what he needs. But an invitation, just to explain what the equipment's used for and everything, so that if it ever becomes an issue, we can answer that question and say, yeah, we completely understood it.
Kurt, did you have?
And as much as possible, Councilman Riley, when we talk with staff and prepare for capital projects, we try to plan up to 5 years in advance. So there may be something on the radar that we know can't be done for 2 years, but in 2023, for example, it's something we want to look at. So that way we'll try to give as much heads up as possible, possibly 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 years in advance of some things that are on the radar to be done over the next few years. When it comes time to it, maybe we won't go forward with it, but it's just things that wish list of it. Maybe not a wish list, but good planning that I give credit to the staff and the prior administrations for doing and trying to plan out as much as they can.
And is there a meeting tomorrow for capital improvements? I had something on my calendar and I don't know why I wrote it down.
No, I'm aware of.
Any other questions?
Yeah, my only question is really more of a comment. I was just wondering if, we kind of monitor our utilities, just kind of see, where we're at. Because, you could have a water leak somewhere and not catch it for months and and if you're not monitoring the water or something that way where, maybe electricity where you see, wait a minute, we're usually about this much and all of a sudden it went up $1,000. Is there, and it may be just, it happened. I'm not, but do we have anything in place like that? Because again, trying to be a good steward of the money, if we see a problem, I'd rather catch it early and say, hey, and I'm not trying to tell people they have to not use the utilities. I'm just saying if we notice, 1 month it's, it's been 10,000 or 15,000 or whatever it is, and all of a sudden it jumps up to 25. What happened? Are we watching that? That's all I'm.
Are you referring to the Moonlight bill? Is that one that you made the question?
No, I'm not questioning the bills per se. As I'm looking at Moonlight and KK, and I know we pay those regular, I'm just wondering, as trying to be a good steward of the money, are we kind of just monitoring? Just kind of keeping a track, and if we're seeing any big changes or things that maybe there's something going on, whatever that is. It may just be normal growth, it may be just normal increase in expenses. That's fine, but are we aware of why there's that change?
Can I go ahead and then
I
I
can go ahead or I can too.
Well, I was just going to say, usually when we prepare our budget, we anticipate all those charges. And so as we review the budget, we'll be able to see what our projected budget was and where we're at with that. And so maybe we could have a more often, like a quarterly budget review instead of, I think we do anyway, don't we? Have a quarterly budget review. So we can go through every 3 months and make sure that we're staying on track with all of our expenses and expenditures. And so
That's all. I'm just wondering I didn't know if we had anything in place. That's all I'm asking.
Can I answer a little bit? Yeah. To kind of go on ground level for you, we actually have a water loss program. So we monitor that. And we even have a spreadsheet and data for that. And then Vicki actually watches the Moonlight bill, the power bills very carefully, even the cell phone bills. And so when we get something out of whack, sometimes she'll come to me and say, hey, this power bill, what's well 3? Well, that's just one of our pumps that kicked on and ran for a while because when it gets hot, things change, pumps kick on more. So it varies, it's gonna vary.
Yeah.
But
Well, I understand it's gonna vary, and I know season on different things, but like we talked before on the Centennial Park, and we found out the meter problem that we didn't know about. And if it hadn't been for us talking about Centennial and You know what I'm saying? Because it just didn't look right, but nobody had really checked because we haven't really, we assumed it was right, and done correctly, and then found out afterwards. And that's what I'm saying is there something in place? It sounds like there is for the most part, and that's all I was wondering is if there's something in place. But you know what I'm saying? The Centennial thing kind of caught us.
Well, that was a unique thing too, though.
It was unique, but they put in the wrong meter or something, right?
Yeah.
It was not metered correctly.
Really 3,500 meters, and they all come calibrated to 1,000 gallons a minute, and we get one or two that's off every now and then, so, but we got it figured out.
Okay. Except that the district may find a bigger bill, right, on that one?
Yeah, they will this month, so.
Well, that's good to know, because we may get a call.
Exactly.
Well, that's why I brought it up. So.
No, I think it's been good that we had a chance to talk about it and we caught it. I just, you know, it was just double checking.
You know that I can't remember. I think I knew about it, but I forgot.
You know, I don't know. I've been telling people everything lately. I really don't know who I've spoken to.
No, it's all good. So any other questions on that?
And thank you for catching that number that was off, by the way, so.
And
that was a test.
That needs to be stated too in the motion, that there's a correction.
Well, then I actually have got it corrected.
What is the correct number?
4736885.
And what's that? What's that?
It's right here.
It should be 213.
Oh, is that all? Okay. All right.
I'll move we approve the purchase orders with the one correction.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, purchase orders are approved. Reports. Let's move this way, Cody. Let's go this direction this time. Do you have anything for us?
I didn't make it to the Parks and Rec, but we've been meeting with just our Trails Committee, and we have some pretty good things we're doing. Cade and Rick Yowie and Preston Cadlick have got permission to kind of form a trail system on BLM land. It's obviously not Roosevelt city limits, but it's pretty close, and it's about the best we can do because there's not a lot of public land nearby. But I mean, we have permission for this, so they flagged it, they're mapping it out, and they said we can go ahead and start doing multi-use trails, mountain bike trails, whatever. So we're kind of in the early stages of that. Still talking about what to do with the trail at here in town, the park, and we need to identify property lines and kind of see where we need to go. It's tough because there's pieces of property that we probably won't be able to get access to or purchase. So we're just hashing that out still.
Not yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah, so that's a work in progress. We met and talked about the ball field project and some good ideas there. Fundraising is going to be something we need to jump on. I think we should get started on it, even though we have a little more time. And we had discussions about subbing it out ourselves and having the city do it. It would save money. I think we could do it. So I'm going to start proposing that to the next Parks and Rec meeting, and we'll try to kick it off from there.
Great.
Well, and something that did come up this week about the Parks and Rec was the soccer folks were unhappy that they were the ones paying $10 per player to utilize the city fields, but that would be extended to all of the, if you're utilizing the field, correct?
I thought baseball.
Yeah, that's not
football.
Well, I understand. That's
Well,
not.
traveling teams and everything are gonna be correct.
So you're saying the traveling teams are doing things on their own.
Well,
But I mean, the concern was if they're using a city field, that they're gonna be charged $10 per player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the city teams have already been doing that.
Well, anybody, so soccer, football, baseball, they've already all been paying that. So each sport, organized sport that uses those fields,
The travel teams have not been,
they're the only ones,
no,
but they're practicing, they're not holding.
but they're
games.
utilizing the fields, we are gonna charge them.
Okay,
I thought we talked about that before I was even involved here.
so it wasn't just soccer that was paying. The others were paying it, the only ones that weren't is the
Traveling baseball and softball.
Okay.
And they're really more, I don't wanna say hard on the field, but they're on there almost every day versus the city groups, so. I mean, Brent, the guys are driving fields every day, sometimes some of the fields twice, so. Definitely needed.
Vince, do you have anything for it?
Did you throw those pictures in? So we have a new, we just start with the fuel, the pretty one. The first one I sent you with the big cute teapot, that one. We now have a new fuel system at the airport. There were some issues with the old fuel system. There was a little cover installed to prevent the thing from filling with sand this time. So there was an additional charge. This was supposed to be a quick replacement. Just plug and play. It didn't. They had to run LAN cables, and then Howard found out that the display that shows what you're pumping into the thing as you're standing at the aircraft wasn't compatible. That was another $1,000 or $2 that I think is going to come out of the airport next budget, this next fiscal year. So that's in. Go to that next picture. So, and I want the council members' help. You guys can email me. So I spend a lot of time at the airport, and I've seen a lot of airports. And so we pay almost $40,000 for a current airport manager to manage the airport and do stuff. And so just the appearance of things like this that would be a $30 bucket of paint and things like that.
And a shovel?
And a shovel to move the dirt, replace the gravel, just make it look nice so that when a business jet comes in. So in my Army career, it was always the idea that housekeeping is a representation of your quality. And so that displays what the quality of the fuel is. Go to the next one, right? So you
know how many times I've seen that?
I mentioned, so the current airport manager, if you mention something like this, the common response is, well, that stupid thing just keeps breaking. We pay, our city with taxes pays somebody close to $40,000 a year to sit there all day long and at least report these things to city engineers or whatever kind of engineer needs to show up to fix something like that. And then the next slide, Brian, one more. We talked about a fuel quality assurance program. Again, you know, a lot of airports you go to have a cap on there. The common response is, well, people keep breaking it. Well, you're there all day. Put another screw in it and put the cap back on it. It's just, if you guys can help me, what would, just email me ideas. We don't need to talk about it now, but things you could think about. And it doesn't need to be airport expertise, because that's what I'm asking for, is an outside, like, hey, at the fire department, they did this. Hey, at the hospital, at radiology, we did this, or, you know, the parks, whatever. Moon Lake, we do this. So that's what I'm working on at the airport, to try and get improved so that we can get more business here at the airport, because when the jets land, executives play golf, they do all kinds of stuff. It becomes a destination. So thanks, Ryan. That's all I have for the airport.
Thanks, Bruce. Thank you. As far as I go, same thing, just it's been mentioned, I did attend the Arts Parks and Rec Committee meeting. Just so everybody's aware, we have some really motivated people to do 4th of July. And so I also was in attendance to an electronic meeting for the Tri-County, and then talking about recreation. And it sounds like as long as we as an entity promote the guidelines, encourage social distancing, those types of things, that and make the public aware of what those are as we're participating in activities, then we're pretty safe in holding events or activities. And so we're trying to figure out ways to make sure that the public is well educated and informed when they come to those events, to try to keep social distancing. You know, if we do the Red Mud Run, that's up for debate right now. It sounds like we're moving towards doing it, but we may change the way we do it. So we may go out in groups of 20 or groups of 50 and kind of space everyone out so that we can still participate, but we can still have some fun. So we're just trying to figure out ways to make that happen. And there's a lot of people that want to make it happen. And in talking with Ryan Claiborne and our legal counsel with Grant, sounds like we're okay to move forward as long as we put some parameters in and cover our bases that way. So we're not sure of UBIC yet. You're gonna have a meeting with.
So I called Chad, and he's gonna have a meeting this week, and he's gonna be inviting Luz, Mark, and Cody. And we'll see what goes from there. So he's back and forth, really struggling on making this decision, so.
One of the biggest things for him is our donations, the amount of money that it takes to run UBIC. With the economy down, with COVID, with everything, it's putting him in a tight spot that way. We do have an Arts Parks and Rec committee that we could task with helping him with that. And I think if we did do something for UBIC, we need to remember that it doesn't have to be huge. It can just be something fun, something to get people out. And, you know, and we have a whole committee that can assist with that. So as you go and participate in that, just remember that if he doesn't feel comfortable and we feel like we want to do something, it can be something small. We can have a committee help with that. Just some thoughts or ideas there. Yeah. Like this mask or this mask? Yeah. So anyway, just some thoughts there. I think that's all the only updates I had. It's mainly that. Plan on moving forward with some of those activities. So we'll see what happens. I've heard that UNT County canceled a lot of theirs, so it's going to be interesting how this all works out. We may have people from UNT County coming over here, and that's going to make it bigger. Yes. Well, and even 4th of July. So they've canceled the county fair and a few other things. Anyway, that's an update from me. Councilman Barron, do you have anything for us?
No, not really. I mean, we spent some time looking at that building on Main Street last couple of weeks ago.
Did you wear a mask?
We talked about
Worry about catching something.
No, but I'm sure Ryan's working on that one, so there's really nothing that I have to report.
Dustin,
I do. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I was just gonna say, I do like that the pool's opening next week, so that'll be good. With the max occupancy of 50, I believe.
Yeah, we're gonna hold it at 50 and see how that works. So.
I am curious, and I think others in the city would be as well, about the pool passes. My wife brought it up to Randy.
I'm shutting that down right now.
Yeah, but the pool pass, there are a lot of people with pool passes, annual pool passes that haven't been able to use them over the last few months. And it might, we maybe need to talk about that as maybe finance group should discuss that.
Yeah, I think we need to address that because even with the pool opening, it ain't gonna, and Booz and Mark will tell you that not every kid or family's gonna get the full time that they normally would. It's gonna be in blocks now because it's clean. So was it 2 hours?
I think that's what Kevin said, yeah, 2 hours, and then they take a break, they pull everyone out, do cleaning, and then open it back up like 15 minutes, half an hour later.
Yeah.
So there would be a
I know-
2 hour block.
I know that on the building, we cut it off, we prorated it for when it closed, and then we didn't charge it all for the next month.
So, and that's probably for the people like my family that pays monthly for it.
Yeah.
But the annual pass, some people pay in advance for the pass and they have a whole year, so I don't know if we need to refund them. Maybe just talk about that as a finance group.
Yeah. Good point. Okay.
I'm kind of curious on how many we're looking at.
Okay.
Things.
Yeah, I was just talking about the utility, the ones we're looking at utility buildings. That's the only check on others as well.
for 1 hour, 4 hours, I could party it.
Dustin,
Do you
have
anything for us?
Or just on for a few more months, sorry.
So I believe there was yesterday, there was a ULCT meeting that I wasn't able to attend. But I received an email from Quinn Benyon, from city manager, and he was wondering about ULCT's involvement in pushing for fair distribution of the CARES Act money, which is money that federal government gave to the state that then disperses that to counties mostly, and then they're hoping that it goes per population, but there was some sticky parts about Salt Lake County and whether they keep it all Utah County type thing. And so, as far as what I know, ULCT has been pushing that should be a population-based distribution, but it was still, I don't think has been decided how that's going to be distributed. I don't know how much that will affect us, but it will affect how much money our city gets.
Well, if anything, and the thing about the first CARES Act, it only would provide the reimbursement of direct COVID-related expenses to cities of 500,000 or more. And there's been discussions, there's a proposal right now with the House of $3 trillion. There would be some additional help for smaller counties and municipalities, but thus far, any type of help that's been offered has to, it's only for COVID-related additional expenses. It can't make up a shortfall due to a decrease in sales tax, for example.
So, I mean, that is something, that's why I think Utah County and Salt Lake County are the only counties that have population bigger than that. So all the money would go to them, and everybody else is like, wait a minute, that should go there. But where we're at with that as far as the discussion and what's actually going to happen.
I did see that email come across from Quinn talking about that a little bit. And I just emailed him back and said, anything we can do to make sure that we get our fair share if that were to happen.
And I just emailed, he had emailed the ULCT president of the, his name.
And Quinn actually contacted me trying to get a hold of you, and all I had for you was.
But I just forwarded him I get ULCT emails every day about updates, and I forwarded him the most recent email about that, and he had been in contact, just trying to make sure that we have some representation to try to get, that fairly distributed throughout the state, just go to the big places. Other than that,
thank you. Councilman Luce, what do you have?
I went to the Arts Parks Recreation. The only other thing I had that was mentioned is the Missoula was canceled for this year, and I think that was reasonable at this time, juncture with the timing and everything. And there was discussion about using Mindy Palmer at the high school and doing something which I really
like that idea.
I think that's better, and I think they could get more kids involved, and I think it's local and it's going to cost a lot less.
You know what I like about that is then those kids that make it to high school already know who the drama teacher is.
And they know the facilities and everything. I thought that was much better, and I appreciated that they reached out and the Arts Parks and talked to Mindy, and she was. She knows, and she's like, yeah, she knows, and she was excited. She actually wanted to do a 2-week instead of a 1 week, and I think that's good. And I agreed with Mayor Burt that it's hard to justify that much money for 60 kids. Nothing against it, because I think it was good. It's just hard when you're trying to be good stewards of the money when you could take the same money and affect 200 kids or something in a good way as well.
Roosevelt doesn't spend that much on any youth programs to just hand over to a youth program.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was
baseball who has 500 kids.
So is this not only this year, but going forward?
Going forward, yeah, I don't think we'll be doing Missoula anymore. And I think that's good for us because, again, I think, and I brought it up at one of the first meetings, we have enough talent in the area. Let's use the talent we have and have them be a part of it. And, let's make something good for everybody. I told Ryan earlier, I'm glad on
a lot of our work, we try to get local people as much as we can. I think anytime you support local businesses, local people, and those services, it comes back to you always. And so I just think we need to always try to do that whenever possible. So I mentioned that. I also attended the arts or the park rec staff meeting. Is that what it's called? The Parks and Rec staff meeting. And just want to applaud their efforts and appreciated them allowing me to have some input on the meeting. And I feel like they're doing a lot of good things in terms of the pool. I know the pool employees not having work jumped right in and helped with the golf course and other things, and they've got a lot of projects done that they wouldn't normally have gotten done. And I think one of the things we missed, I know there's concern about the cost of the golf course and subsidies and stuff, but in talking to Aaron, I said, does anyone sit down and figure out all the tournaments and charities that we use the golf course for? Because I think people forget, yeah, we're subsidizing a little bit, but a lot of that's coming back to us because of all these, the API, the UB Tech, the hospitals, and USU Strata, all these golf tournaments and others that are raising money for scholarships and other things that keeps money local. And I don't think we factor that into the cost. I know the golf course is expensive, and yeah, I want to save money. I'm not trying to dispute that, but at the same token, there's things that it does that people don't understand. And I think, and so I asked Aaron if they could maybe start keeping track, and so they could maybe present that and say, we held 30 tournaments and they raised approximately $1 million, whatever it was, and just talk a little bit selling that idea, I think would be important. So we talked about that. We talked about the pool and starting out small and then ramping up as we kind of feel how it kind of works up. And so I just applaud the Parks and Rec crew. I know it's a hard job, and I thought they did a good job. Appreciate Ryan being over that and monitoring and making sure that they're doing things right for the community, because that's, especially now with summer coming, it's going to be more important to have those facilities. And so I think they're doing great work, and appreciate being at the meeting. So that's all I have.
Great, thank you. That idea of the golf course is one that I brought up to John and them, and that we could quantify the benefit of the golf course. And one of the things that I asked for at that time was that how much we're making for each golf tournament that goes back into scholarships and those types of things. And then what I'd like to see, to go just a little bit further than that, is the benefit, how much we're spending at the golf course, like our overall recreation budget, because we've talked about recreation and trying to dial all that in, 4th of July, the UBIC, all the things we spend on recreation and get a really complete budget. Well, one of my things is I want to be fair to the public too. So the golf course, it does use this much resource, but if we can quantify the full benefit that the community is getting out of that, then we can better understand how to proportion our recreation budget for that. So maybe it is in line. Maybe we need to raise our rates at the golf course a little bit so that accounts for a little more money in other areas so that it's more fair. But I do think I agree 100%. And when John was here, we did have that conversation, is how do we quantify the benefit of some of those things and factor that back into what we're spending for our overall recreation. So that's a good point. I'd like to see us follow through with that.
I know there's a lot of fundraisers, football, golf, other groups do fundraisers there. I mean, there's just so much money that goes through there that people don't necessarily realize or understand why it's such a benefit.
Yeah.
And
the outside, people that travel in to play and the other economic benefits that we get. So, and it's hard to quantify them all, but we can do best guesses. And I wanted to just make sure that we're being fair with all of our residents and making sure that we're not overspending in one area and underspending in another. Ryan, do you have anything for us tonight?
I do have a few.
Yes, Randy.
I have a question real fast. So I know that there was a contest for the Bird Festival, an art contest. Do you know anything how that went or what happened with that?
they ended up, if I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, that they were going to do it online, and they were still going to have the kids submit stuff. And they actually, I know who's the person in charge? Preston.
Yeah,
He showed some,
gathered a lot.
yeah, but I think it was all kind of done virtually.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
Kurt, share with the whole class.
Yeah, Kurt, how about you?
Oh, I was just asking,
Little note you were passing.
I was just asking Brian if he was gonna talk a little bit about the CIV experience and how.
Is that why you're laughing?
Well, it went, how did you put that?
Warrant. It didn't go as well as we would. Sorry.
So anyway, now that he let the cat out of the bag, I guess I will talk about CIV a little bit, I guess. We did go in and try to get our funding, but they only offered a full loan at 2.5%.
That was for the water tank?
Yeah. But we go back on July 11th and we try to do it again, so. It seemed like to me they were a little confused on the project. They were asking questions that should not even been asked. I mean, in the first description that one of their own described, they said that we had springs and we don't have one spring. So we kind of started off on a bad note, and trying to get out of that was really tough. It was.
Yeah, can I add to that? Not to mention, the way it looked to me is that you had two individuals, the chair of the CID board, and what was that other lady's name? Candace, who presented it. They do a synopsis of the project. They really heavily tainted our project right off the bat to look like we were coming and asking for a tank and we had no need for a tank. And this is what they really, they had set the meeting up initially. We had nowhere to come. We couldn't hardly come back from that.
Was it partially because we'd already, before we got on the board, didn't you guys present before? And
well, I'll tell you what really, that I didn't think about this, but really hurt us is before Ryan was even there, our previous administration had gone to economic development and a few others to paint the picture that this project was really an economic development project, that it would generate so many jobs and everything else. And I forgot about that, but that's also something that really probably hurt us, is because CIB does not like to land on anything to do with economic development, growth, those types of things. So when we went in, I think that was part of their decision, or the reason they presented it the way they did, is because we had went in with an economic development project, and then when we didn't get the funding from them, then we tried to change it, and there was some manipulation, I think, that happened. And I know, talking with people at UBAG and others at economic development, they felt like we were being dishonest in our presentation. And so we were really at a disadvantage before we even went in there. So you can tell they stacked the deck against us right off the bat, and it's because of the approach that was taken that really just, it put us in a bad situation. And I forgot about that, but that's probably a really big reason why.
Randy and I and Kurt did too, we made a number of phone calls the last 2 months to make sure we were straightforward with them on the project, that we pulled out of EDA, we pulled everything, redid it, and did everything that they asked for, but it still felt like it was playing against us. But I don't know, it was a good experience. It was the first one for me, and humbling, definitely humbling.
so you'll go back and make the same proposal, or you're gonna have to tweak the one?
Well, it's the funding meeting, so we can come back, renegotiate, see, we were one vote away, and I still don't know if it's our best option. Well, it is our best option, but not one that we'll take, but we're one vote away from having a 50-50 at 1%, and which would have been a lot better than what they, so if we get that one vote swing.
And if I may, the one vote that maybe was the deciding factor is an employee of the state of Utah who's a CIB staff member, so.
We have a difficult, we have an uphill battle. But there's a lot of misinformation. You can tell on a Zoom meeting, it's very difficult to clarify all that too.
Yeah.
They were saying we have 5 million gallons of storage and we only needed 2 million gallons of storage, but they counted the 2 million gallon tank that is owned by Victory. And then we also tried to explain that there's another 1 million gallon tank that is kind of on its last leg that will eventually be pulled out of the system. And then we tried to explain that all of our water isn't springs, that we have to pump it. And the source of pumping is where we need the tank, because that's where we're having the biggest issue. And all the rest of our storage is down lower in our system. And so there just was a lot of disconnects that would, like I said, the way she presented it, it was not.
And I knew they didn't understand it by their questions, because they just weren't, this wasn't clicking, which would be hard because you don't see the system, and with Zoom, it made it hard.
Well, I think we had an update, I forgot about some of that, but Kurt knows because a little bit, because I was in Lori's office and she was explaining to me some of the reactions that she was getting from EDA and others. And I forgot about all that, but I'll almost guarantee that was part of it. Frustration right off the bat.
Yeah. But I enjoyed it for the experience, so.
And we can always go back again to refine our application in the future if needed.
Yeah. So while we're on talking about projects, I just want to update a few, just so you guys are aware, in case you get calls or whatever, but the 5th East Sidewalk project kind of going a little slow. We wish it was going a little, they're just moving utilities right now. Hopefully next week or two, you'll start seeing cement being poured, but.
So they were pouring some cement today.
Was they?
They got some gutters re-poured and kind of getting
getting
ready for that, yeah. And the Strata, I don't think it was planned, the Strata's running their fiber optics now too, so they kind of have to wait for that. Which is nice, I'll wait.
Yeah, that's okay. They've got the conduit at our house. It's been there for a while, so it doesn't help much.
So they're just putting in conduit.
Yeah. But they're doing all right. They're not making more messes than what needs to be, which is good, so. The airport runway, they pushed back the paving to June 8th. I can't wait till this project is over and done. I don't know about you guys, but, so June 8th is the quickest that we're hearing, and I can see that being pushed back another week, because we're fighting with 2 other airports and their projects too, with the paving. And then there was some conduit and stuff that they laid underneath that they cambered, and there was some kinks, and so we're having them do some patches and stuff. So if you see them digging up something new, not pavement,
okay,
not pavement, just the storm drain and stuff like that, they need to get it taken care of, so. The website, I've updated you guys on the website, Redesign, right? So the launch date is tomorrow. So maybe not tomorrow, but the day after, whenever, kind of get on there and look and see if there's anything if there's glitches or anything we need to fix. To me, that's probably the most important time to look at it, because we don't know how things are gonna transfer over. So tomorrow's the launch date for that.
Did they do the Parks and Rec page along with that? Is that done as well?
I'm not sure. I'll have to get Lee. She did it to where you can, so for my department, it's rooseveltcity.com/water. So it's gonna be rooseveltcity.com/whatever department, right? Is that how she said it this morning?
Okay.
So it should be that /Arts Park and Rec. But we'll look into it. We can probably add something in there too. That's the beauty of this is that we'll be able to get in there and change things anytime we want, so.
Good. My fan club tried to get onto the meeting, the Zoom tonight, and can't find the link. So I think it just needs to be really easily accessible for base users.
I don't have a fan club.
Yeah. I got a text, one fan. She tried to get on it.
I'm just glad we have a club.
Dominion Energy, I don't know if you noticed the work going on in South State. And they're working their way towards the highway and 8 South. That's going on, so, and it's linked with the project in Mighton. They're just starting work together on that, so, and I haven't had any complaints, so they must have been doing pretty good.
I'm glad they're doing that before we do that road next year too.
Yeah, that's good. So that's the main big projects. We did open our doors here. We have a plexiglass up. We're trying to do what we're supposed to. And then as far as the parks and rec, we already talked about the pools. You already know that. I don't want to beat it around, but baseball, girls softball are canceled. But we are still doing signups for co-ed softball, which is going to be later in the season. So,
Soccer, is it still going?
I'm not sure. That's up to AYSO.
That's later anyway.
Yeah, that's usually fall, right?
I've seen signs saying sign up by the Kings Peak Elementary.
Yeah, they're probably gearing up for it,
But they did cancel the Little League. I got an email a week or so ago that said they were gonna do it, but I don't know if that's changed.
Little League for what?
For baseball.
It's canceled.
AYSO called and asked if they could put their sign on Central Park there. And they said they're doing signups in anticipation that they will do it, but they haven't made decisions. That's what they told me, so.
Okay. That's probably, we've hit everything. We talked about the 4th you guys see, so I'm not even worried about it. So is there anything you expect from me or want? So let me know.
Do we have any word on the applicants for?
Yes.
So Ryan can rest and come back.
Yeah, he wants to. I told him I'm driving it out as long as I can. So,
Yeah, he's doing a great job.
I'm really happy with what's happening right now, but yes, they narrowed the pool down to 12 or 13 applicants. Wow. They sent me the list. There were 58 applicants initially.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
So we have about 12 or 13 that they sent me, and then they've asked that I just discuss those with them. We'll talk about it. We'll narrow it down to 6 or 8. And then, because we're trying to keep it as confidential as possible who's applied. And after we go through and narrow it down to 6 or 8, I imagine that the council will become involved at that point. We'll narrow it down then to another 3 or 4, to just 3 or 4. And at that point, we'll probably have staff. And you're always smiling over there.
I asked him if he got his application.
You don't need one.
Sorry, I smiled.
I'm just kidding. No offense, I couldn't help it. But when we get down to about 3 or 4, we'll have staff involved. And, we'll probably do meet and greets and those types of things. And then just make sure that they're a really good fit. So we still have a little bit of time, but we are narrowing it down. I emailed back Jim and his firm, and then we'll just have to set up a date probably this week to just on a phone conversation, go through each applicant and probably just weed out a few more until we get to that situation. So it's going. It's going quicker, a little bit quicker now.
Would it be appropriate to have like that last 6 actually come out here?
I'll leave that to Jim. If they feel comfortable doing that, I would say, yeah. Some of them are, unless there's a really good chance they could be the city manager, they don't want to divulge to employers or anybody else that they're even looking. So there's some confidentiality there. But I'll see what he says about that. Because the more that we can meet, the better I feel.
That part of his pitch was that, yeah, we could have choice of several different options.
Yeah.
And that says something if they take a weekend or something.
Really actually and that might narrow down the pool from 6 or 8 to 3 or 4 right off the bat if they're willing to make that trip. So usually Roosevelt City, but they end up looking for the the applicant would pay up to, I think it was up to $1,500 is what is in the contract for each applicant to come. So we would pay for them to come. So the more we had, the more we pay. Just,
I think that the number was more like 3 if we did have people come.
I think it was 3 or 4, yeah. Well, we could have more, but just so you know, we pay the cost for that. So, and I'll get with him and just see, and then, and whatever he suggests, I'll pass that on to the county. Keep plugging away. So. We do have a couple of reasons to go into closed session. One, main one is litigation. Is Grant still there? So litigation, and then Dave mentioned maybe discussing personnel issue while we're in closed session. So litigation and personnel issue.
You're trying to fire me already?
So you need a motion to go into closed session?
To go into.
This is what you say on that. You make a motion to go into closed session to discuss, and then you say what it is, and then convene back into a regular city council meeting. That's the motion.
I move that we go into closed session to discuss litigation and personnel issue, and then reconvene
into a regular session. Motion in the second, Councilman Baird, all in favor?
Aye. I'm gonna go stand there.